Hello, Nicoletta. Welcome to the Couply Relationship Advice Podcast.
Hi, so honored and happy to be here, and we've got some great questions lined up.
We've got so many interesting things to talk about in this episode. I'm very excited. I think this might be one of the most excited I've been to do a podcast episode. We're diving in deep, and this is the first time we've ever reached out to the Couply community and got their questions and featured them in the podcast. So I'm looking forward to really getting into it. I'll
Excellent,
give
me
a
too.
quick I'll give a quick introduction to everyone. So, hello, Coupley community. We got a heck of a show for you today with Nicoletta. Nicoletta Heidegger is a licensed marriage and family therapist practicing in the beautiful Los Angeles, California. She's also the host of the hit show Sluts and Scholars, a sex positive, shame free educational podcast where she keeps your sex smart and your smarts sexier. And her words have been featured all over the place, from Vice to Hustler. We are honored to have you with us, Nicoletta.
Thank you so much. So happy to be here.
And I'd love to hear a little bit about, firstly, how you got into the space, and secondly, some of the cool things that you've got coming up as well.
Yeah, so let's see, I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. And so I've been licensed since about 2018, but been in school and grad school for decade plus. So it's been a long time. And I would say I initially, got into this field. I was lucky that I had a bunch of great folks growing up, my parents, and also some other caregivers and friends and therapists that were really supportive of my own sort of sexual exploration. And so it really helped me to feel less shame. And I think I was also just born like open talking about things. I was kind of just born with like a fuck you attitude, I think, in some ways, where I was really drawn to things that like the taboo. So it's
Yeah.
no wonder that I ended up being into kink and things later in life. But there's a part of me that's always been drawn a little bit to the, oh, you're not supposed to talk about that, or like, oh, this isn't something that we discuss, here. So I'm like, that's what I want to do. But I would say my sexuality and eroticism has been such a big part of my life personally and professionally. It's really been something that inspires me, a way that I can be creative. And that on top of having folks in my life growing up who were supportive of my sexual and relational exploration in a mostly non-shaming way, really helped me to get to a place where people would just kind of naturally come to me to ask things and share things and talk about things. And then by the time I went to college, I went to Stanford. I worked at the Sexual Health Resource Center where people could come get peer counseling and you get like an allotted amount of free condoms for the semester. So people could come get that. They could buy toys and tools. They could get tested. And then in my senior year, I ended up getting asked to write a sex column because I was the mascot at Stanford, which is a tree. So I had a thing there called Sex Talks with the Tree, which was hilarious. But actually, some great info that I, still read back those articles today, and I'm like, yeah, we were covering some important stuff. And then by the time I went to grad school for clinical psychology and marriage family therapy, it was even clearer that there weren't as many therapists, doing this, but also that most therapists get little to no training in human sexuality, like one class, if that, and it's pretty basic. Now it is required to have one class, at least in California, but it's only 10 hours usually, or sometimes it's just pretty broad. And so it's such an important part of life. I didn't want therapy to be another place where people couldn't talk about sex.
Yeah. And you've gone on to do so much in this space. For anyone that hasn't heard of it, I'd love you to talk a little bit about Sluts and Scholars and how that got going because I've been a listener now and it is truly amazing. So incredible
Thank
job.
you. Thank you. Yeah, the podcast is 6+ years old. And I started it because I really wanted to be able to reach a wider audience and provide a mostly free resource where people could learn and connect. And it was also just a way for me to not just be stuck in private practice talking to myself in an echo chamber with my clients. So I get to interview people whose work and research and the things that they do in their life are interesting to me, so that I can share those resources with the general public. And the title, the name Sluts and Scholars, I sort of had that with some help from a colleague and friend named Nina Hartley, and she was a longtime pornographer and educator and just all around awesome human. And we were just lamenting on the fact one day when we were at the Korean spa how there's just so much judgment around people who are openly interested in sex. And especially for women, how we're not taken seriously as professionals if we are seen as sexual, and how that's sort of limited sometimes the areas or spaces in which we are welcome to educate and things like that. So yeah, why can't you be a slut and a scholar? And so I really created this podcast for professionals who prioritize pleasure, and people who think that that's important, and kind of re-owning this term slut to be something that is not a negative connotation, but something that is someone who just feels comfortable with their own sexuality and eroticism, whatever that may be. And so, yeah, I've been running the show for 6+ years now, and actually super exciting. I have my first live show coming up that I'm hosting with 3 other awesome colleagues. And we're so glad that Couply is actually going to be offering some cool stuff at the show. So definitely come join. It's happening February 10th. In Hollywood near Los Angeles. And you can also join in. We're going to have tickets where people can also buy like a recorded version so they can watch from anywhere in the world at their leisure. It's called Afternoon Delight. And you can buy tickets, find the link, check out more information at adlive.eventbrite.com. But I'll give you the link so you can share with your community, and would love to see some Couply listeners there, because it is myself, another colleague named Dr. Tara, another one named Dr. Nazanin, and a woman named August. And we all have top sex and relationship podcasts. And some of us are therapists, some of us are researchers, some of us are journalists, but all in this sex and relationship space. And we decided to come together to like share all of our top tips and tools for maintaining sexy, great connection over time. And it's going to be great.
It's going to be awesome. It's going to be so awesome, Nicoletta. When you talked to me about this, I was like, wait, what? And then Dr. Tara talked to me about this, and she's like, Tim, we have to have you be part of this. And then when I saw all the materials, I was like, oh my goodness, this is going to be so awesome. Bringing together the Sex Avengers, going to have some amazing conversations. I'm inviting some guests as well, some other people in the space. But if you're listening to this and you're based in Los Angeles, February 10th, or just the surrounding areas, drive in for it, guys. When are you ever going to see this group of people together in the same place? So please come through. If Los Angeles is accessible to you, February 10th, put it in the diary, put it in the calendar, links below. Come out, and it's going to sell out so fast.
Or if you're feeling fancy and bougie, we are purposefully having it around Valentine's Day. So there's no better gift, in my opinion, than to, give yourself the gift of tools for yourself and your relationship and your sex life. So make a weekend out of it, come out, get a sexy hotel in Hollywood, come join. And again, if it's, impossible to join in that way, you can buy a ticket to watch it online so you can watch it in the sexy comfort of your own home.
Tools, toys, and a great time for all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Amazing. Okay, we're going to get into Couply's questions. The community had so many questions for you, Nicoletta. I was kind of blown away, but we pulled them together, and I'm really, really looking forward to getting into this. And this is fairly new territory for me, so I'm hoping I'm probably going to be bringing you a little bit more down to the ground level and getting you to explain a lot of the terms, because I think for many of our Couply users as well, for a lot of us, it's our first time really getting into the relationship space and starting to consciously work on things. So some of this more edgier stuff is very new and exciting.
Yeah, and that's often where I start with clients and listeners too, is just a bit back to the basics. And even for people who feel like they know more, it can always be good to come back to the basics. And the fact that we got so many questions, I think, is just indicative that like people have so many questions, but it sometimes takes somebody opening the door for there to be permission and comfort to talk about this stuff. So you don't have to be perfect at all these things. Sometimes you just have to know how to open the door.
I always think of this stat that we did. We interviewed 2,000 couples, Nicoletta, and the stat blew my mind. We asked them about sex and communication, and here's the stat. 90% of Couply users wanted to try new things in the bedroom, but 43% were not comfortable having a conversation about sex with their partner. And that is a big, big discrepancy. So together, if you're listening to this podcast, we're about to break down some walls and get some conversations going.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's go into the first question. Hi.
I'm excited to listen to you read these.
Hi. Me and my partner have been together for almost 5 years, and I want to try getting her to have more fun with me being a BDSM mistress and as me being her slave. And I think we had a related question, which I think might be the same person answering the same question twice.
They really want to know.
And it was a little bit more direct. How do I get my partner to be my mistress in the bedroom? I love having BDSM sex, and I don't mind being the slave.
Okay, so to break it down, if you don't know what BDSM is, it's 4 letters, but it actually stands for 6 words. So it stands for bondage and discipline, dominance and submission, and sadism and masochism. I think when a lot of people hear the word BDSM, they initially think like sort of what this person is asking, but they think like dark dungeon, 50 Shades of Grey vibes. And it certainly can be that, but it doesn't have to be that. So if you've ever been interested in getting your hair pulled a little or being spanked a little bit or playing around with different roles, guess what? You're interested in BDSM. So there's a lot of people who are into this, but they maybe have misinformation about what it has to look like, what it can look like, all of the options and the creativity. And there can certainly be a lot of, shame around this interest. And in terms of this question specifically, I always find it helpful if you're afraid to bring something up, for the first time. I invite people to blame me. So use this podcast episode, use an app like Couply, use something out there. There are some other great resources too, like books on this topic, other podcasts like mine on this topic. And you can be like, you know what? This thing came across my feed, or blame the algorithm, whatever. This thing came across my feed and, I was, it was kind of interesting to me. Would you be willing to listen to it? Or there's some apps too, that will prompt some of these topics where you can at least sort of gauge that initial question. Once you've sort of gauged that, first I would also ask that partner like, hey, when you hear BDSM, what do you think of? Right? To just sort of check their potential thoughts and feelings about it. Because if someone has never heard BDSM before and they hear, I want you to be my slave, that word can bring up a lot of feelings, sensations, connections, trauma, all sorts of things. And so if someone doesn't know what that really means, what your actual interest is in it, they might be like, no way. And so I really also want to invite this person or anyone listening to break it down to the base level of like, what is it about this that is exciting for you? And not in a judgmental way, but in a curious way. So that instead of just using the words and the names without description, to really help your partner understand what is it about this that is exciting to you. And so maybe for example, it might be, I've realized that I really work hard all day. And when it comes to sex and intimacy, I just want to be kind of told what to do. And it's so nice for me to be able to just like take a break and relax and be able to just like know that I'm pleasing you and to have like something in my day that just feels guided as opposed to me being the boss like I am all day. So really getting to these core layers instead of just using the terms where you might not know how your partner feels about these terms. And then asking them like, well, when you think of BDSM, what do you think of? If your partner is down and they're like, yeah, I want to do that, but I don't know where the fuck to start. The good news is you don't have to do it alone. So there are people out there called professional DOMs, professional dominatrices or professional masters of all different genders. And they work at privately owned, what's called dungeons. I know I said not all BDSM is dark dungeons, but this is just the name of the learning space. They do offer sometimes online classes or in person, and you can literally go and learn how to sort of find your inner dominant or your inner submissive. A few folks that I refer to for this, one is named Colette Pervette. She's been on my podcast. Another is Mistress Justine Cross. There's usually places like this in all cities. And so take a class. There's also another app that I like called Beducated, and they have videos for stuff like this. So watch a video together about like BDSM basics, and see what you can do. So hope that's some helpful tools to get started.
Very, very helpful. It seems like they maybe wanted to sort of skip to the end result versus going through a little bit of the process and the conversation.
Understandable. And look, if you know you have that kind of open dialogue with your partner, maybe you can skip some steps. But if you've like never talked about what you're interested in and it hasn't been normalized in your partnership to be like, hey, what are you into? What do you like? It can feel 0 to 100 to be like, I want to be your slave.
Yeah.
Unless
I,
you're on like an app that has sex forward, something like FetLife or Field, which for people who don't know are apps that are a little more like sex forward, for dating, then do slow it down a little bit. I know you're excited about this. I know you want to engage in this with your partner, and you may have to see where you're at communication wise first to give yourself a better chance at success, and open dialogue.
yeah. I really liked how they phrased it as well, saying like, I don't mind being the slave. I don't mind.
Just to clarify.
Might be like yeah, just to clarify, I mean, if we're picking, but I have no problem being the slave. Like, I don't mind at all. And I want you to be my mistress. And they might be like, I don't actually even know what that means.
Right.
So yeah, very good. I want to try things sexually that my wife doesn't. In general, she seems happy to do the same things the same way. We also struggle with my sex drive being higher than hers. We're both about 45 with 2 teenagers. We've been married 17 years and under considerable stress, being unhappy with our jobs. It feels like I make most of the effort in our sex life. Can I get her as committed to our sex life, or do I just have to let her be? There isn't much good going on in our lives, but sex is my fun outlet. I do a lot of masturbating as a result of all this.
Super common question, and probably the reason that I see most of the couples that I see in my therapy practice. So I just want to like normalize that what we would call desire discrepancy is probably the most common thing that I see. And first, to answer this question, I do want to sort of debunk the false narrative that there are high libidos and low libidos. Desire, libido, things like that are much more complex and layered. There are a lot of things that impact it, from what we call a biopsychosocial lens, meaning like things like hormones, like you mentioned, your age, things that are going on in our life can affect our biology, which can affect our desire, our psychology. So basically, things like, are we enjoying the sex that we're having? Are we connecting in the ways that we want to? How do we feel about our partner? Are there resentments? That's going to impact things. And then the socioculture part, like, is there permission in our community? Is there permission in the way that we communicate to talk about sex? So there are so many factors that can impact what we like, what we're into, and how we desire sex. And so I do want to invite this person and anyone listening to kind of drop this false thing of high libido, low libido. And one of the ways that I really like to educate people about that is to tell them about spontaneous versus responsive desire. I don't know if this is something you talk about on Couply at all.
A little bit. I think we've done it more through the lens of brakes and accelerators,
Yeah.
and just looking at the different ways that people have different brakes and accelerators, and
Yeah.
spontaneous and non-spontaneous, and build up being some of those.
Yeah, so for folks maybe tuning in for the first time, brakes are going to be the things that maybe put you off the mood, that turn you off. Accelerators are going to be the things that leave you open to feeling desire. But basically, to break it down in the shortest way that I can, Desire and arousal are separate experiences. So, arousal is just the body's physical, unconscious response to some kind of stimuli. It's usually out of our initial control. And this is like, things like getting wet, things like getting hard, things like heart starting to race. That is arousal. Arousal is not just sexual. We can get aroused by all kinds of things. It just means your nervous system is kind of turning on or turning up. Desire is more like the head and the heart of, I want to do this thing. Now, some people have desire at the same time as arousal, and sometimes one happens without the other, and this can be common. When it comes to spontaneous and responsive desire, there are people out there, this is usually testosterone-driven people, or I would say cisgendered men, and spontaneous is sort of like the wind blows and I have a boner. I'm ready to have sex. Like nothing really in particular seems to have happened, but like I want sex. Responsive desire looks more like that person, and these people often get put in a category of having low libido. Looks like that person not thinking about sex. Maybe on the sort of surface, it looks like they don't think about sex. So it could be potentially this partner, just not really thinking about it. And instead, what it looks like is responsive desire people instead need to be open to the idea of getting turned on. And then they have to sort of in their head think about almost the pros and the cons a little bit of like, well, is this sex worth having? Is this sex that I enjoy? Do I usually feel good after I have sex? And then they might need to consider, are the situations aligned? Are the kids put to bed? Are the dishes done? Is my work finished? Then if they're open to the idea of getting turned on, they make a choice to join that spontaneous person. And then once their body starts getting physically aroused, then they feel desire. And they're like, oh, I remember that I like this. Now I want to have sex. And so as fate will have it, most people who are spontaneous end up partnering with a responsive person. And at the beginning of a relationship, you don't notice because it's spontaneous for both people because it's exciting and it's new. And then when years down the line, age, hormones, things can change your sort of desire, responsive, and spontaneousness. So then you might get to this place where you're the spontaneous person, you're already ready to go, you're trying to initiate with your partner, they're doing something else, not in the mood at all, and they're just like, I was just cleaning the table. Why are you trying to initiate sex with me? And they bristle at it. And so it's important to know, what are your styles? The book Come As You Are by Emily Nagoski is helpful for this. Another person that I love for this is Miss Jaya. She's created something called the Erotic Blueprints, which can help you figure out what your sort of erotic style is and your erotic language. There's also a great TV show you could maybe watch with your partner that you're talking about, called Sex, Love, and Goop. I don't love everything that Gwyneth Paltrow's Goop does, but I do really like this special because it features couples who are going through this exact predicament. So what I'm getting at is, sure, maybe your partner isn't as interested and doesn't value sex as much as you do. That is a possibility. You could go to a sex therapist or a sex coach to get at the bottom of that, or ask your partner, hey, do you want more connection with me? Is sexual connection something that you value, even if you're not feeling super into it right now? And so if they want it, or if they do share this value, you have an opportunity to learn each other's language more. You have an opportunity to learn each other's styles more, and not just be like, I'm high, they're low, I'm interested, they're not interested. And to really get to the bottom of what is contributing to where our sex life is at now. Like I said, is it things like hormones? Is it the quality of the sex you're having? Is it your relationship? Is it resentment? And then, sex therapists like me can help with something like that. But don't despair. There's a lot of steps you can take to figure out if this is something that you align on more. There's also a great book I would recommend by a colleague, and it is called Sex When You Don't Feel Like It, by Cindy Darnell. But ask your partner first before you're just like, hey, I think you'd like this book because you don't feel like having sex with me. Maybe ask that question first of like, hey, are you interested in exploring this more? I heard about this thing. Maybe we could read it together.
Yeah, don't just leave the book on their bed, their midnight, their nightstand. Sorry, as a little
I mean,
surprise gift.
some people do things that way and it turns out okay, but that's not my personal style of communication.
Awesome. Really, it's really interesting. And when I think about the question as well, I wondered that if you were going to go along those lines around when they said, "But sex is my fun outlet." There's not too much good going on in our life, but sex is my fun outlet. And I definitely imagine that there are
Mm,
probably other people whose desire levels aren't as responsive when there are so many additional stressors going on in their
yes,
lives.
absolutely. I'm so glad you said that. There's another concept called core erotic feelings. I think it was coined by a colleague of mine named Dr. Jess O'Reilly, who has some great podcasts and other things. Has she done
Hey,
stuff with Couply?
she's a Toronto. She is a
She is
Toronto gal.
Toronto. Yes.
Yeah,
See, Canadians know what's up. Um,
yeah.
so she talks about core erotic feelings, and that is basically what is the feeling you need to feel before you're open to connecting intimately. And some people turn towards sex when they're feeling stressed, like the person who wrote in, who's
Mm,
like, this is a nice outlet, things are sucking, but this would be a great way to feel better. Other people, stress is not an invitation for them. You know, their core erotic feeling may need to be feeling relaxed, feeling happy, feeling confident, feeling strong, feeling whatever. And so if that could be another place to start, is like, what are each of your core erotic feelings? Because it may not be that this person is disinterested, but they may need to be feeling a certain way before they're open to connecting with you. And how can we work on those other aspects of life? And I know it can be hard because the person who turns towards sex might feel a little hungrier sometimes.
mm,
But if you can learn each other's styles, there's a lot of possibilities for you.
amazing. I'm a 35-year-old female who's been married just under 2 years. We have no kids. I'm struggling to orgasm and have been struggling the entire marriage. It's not for a lack of trying on his part or a lack of stimulation. It just takes ages for me to get sufficiently aroused. When pleasure finally does start building, it usually just stops building after a while. The nerves can start getting sensitive, or it just stops feeling good and becomes uncomfortable no matter what he tries. So I ask him to stop. That's very frustrating because it feels like my whole body is tense and has no release, and that normally results in headaches and muscle pain. On the odd occasion when the pleasure doesn't stop but carries on building to orgasm, I feel no pleasure with the orgasm. I can feel pleasure up to the point of release, but then I feel nothing. It's like my body starts responding to the orgasm and I feel nothing. It's so anticlimactic and dissatisfying. I'm on 20 milligrams of Prozac for fibromyalgia and anxiety, if that might be the issue.
Thank you for your question. Firstly, I just want to like validate that I hear how upsetting and frustrating that probably is for you. And there are a lot of people who struggle with this. And I'm so glad this person included the medical stuff that's going on, because that tells me maybe they already know there's a connection there, but they may not be seeing a doctor or specialist who shares in the value of prioritizing their pleasure, which is true for a lot of doctors out there, unfortunately, even OBGYNs, that a lot of them don't have specialized sexuality training because things like Prozac, and I think you said fibromyalgia, any
Yeah.
physical things and medication you're taking can absolutely impact orgasm and pleasure responses. Prozac is and not your doctor, so don't think I'm your doctor giving you this advice, but Prozac is a type of SSRI, which means it affects serotonin. And SSRIs are very known to inhibit things like libido, desire, things like that. Fibromyalgia, again, this is a little, I'm not your doctor or a doctor medically, but I do know that it can impact things like nerve pain, tissues, and sexual response as well. And so my advice would be to get yourself to a sexual medicine specialist to see what is going on physically and confirm what is physical. And rule that in or rule that out first. There are a lot of people who struggle with orgasms when there's nothing physical going on, and that I would, answer maybe a little differently. But when we have these potential physical aspects going on, it's really key to check into that first, to see what could be going on, whether that's I need to change my medication, or here are some supplements I could take, or here's some options that I have if I'm, experiencing something like fibromyalgia or whatever's going on. And so a sexual medicine specialist is usually a gynecologist or a urologist who has specialized training in human sexuality. There aren't as many of these out there as I would wish there to be, but they do exist. And they are someone who, can help look at things, whether that be pain, not orgasming, libido issues, hormones, things like that. And so they can help you figure that out. If you are seeing a doctor already for some of this stuff, I know it can be hard to advocate for oneself to a doctor, but I might try to talk to the doctor and say, my sex and my pleasure is important to me, and I would like your help figuring out how I can come to terms with what's going on with the physical things going on, my medication and my diagnosis. Is that something you can help me with? And if it's not, you need to give me a referral to somebody who can.
Right. I had a friend, a male friend, that also experienced such similar symptoms when he was taking Prozac when he was first prescribed Prozac as well. And he almost very, 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 very similar description, which is so interesting. And that I just recalled that memory as you were talking through this. It does seem like there's something there, because it seems like she was saying, I've been struggling the entire marriage, but maybe not the entire relationship. We don't know.
Yeah.
We don't have that detail, but it seems like it's something newish for this person.
Yeah. And don't just, if you are taking that medication, don't just, stop cold turkey, talk to your doctor. There are other alternatives, hopefully that you can come up with your, prescribing doctor. But a sexual medicine specialist is going to, help with that. And in addition to the physical stuff, I also really like to invite people to check out this, that book that I mentioned earlier, Come As You Are. And then there's a great online resource called OMG Yes. OMG Yes provides educational stuff around the vagina, the vulva, and pleasure and orgasm. So check that out. But again, first and foremost, let's confirm what the physical stuff is and see if there's anything to be done about that, so that you can then start to do the other stuff, the relational, the psychological aspects of it. Because orgasm kind of requires, again, that same model I mentioned earlier of like biology, psychology, and relational.
Mm-hmm. I'm a 26-year-old male, and my girlfriend is 24 years old. We are Christians and looking to get married within 9 months. When we have sex getting married, I'm wondering how best to talk to her about erogenous zones. We both have had sex before becoming Christians and being baptized, so we are familiar with the term, but how do I bring up that mine are similar to some women's? Foreplay around the nipples.
Okay, so two kind of questions here. First, I would invite you to check out a colleague of mine. Her name is Brittany Broaddus Smith. I'm happy to send this link to you, Tim. She was a colleague of mine from my master's program and specializes in sex and Christianity, and basically talks and educates people from a sort of Christian lens and helps them sort of find pleasure and connection in a way that also feels in line with their religious values, and also helps debunk some things in terms of what's maybe in the Bible and things like that around like actual pleasure advocacy, which is in there. But I think a lot of people, it really depends how you're interpreting and what your sort of specific religious doctrine is, but would really recommend that. I also am wondering if it feels in line with your values to talk about things before marriage. So not saying you have to do them, but can you at least be talking about them so you're not going from 0 to 100, because that's no way to learn anything ever. Right? Like when we learn to drive a car, we don't go from never driving to going 100 miles an hour on the freeway. And so is there a way that matches with your values to at least have these discussions before? And you may find someone like Brittany or whomever who is maybe a religious support person, where you can maybe get coaching or help from somebody who supports and shares the same values with your spiritualism. while also giving you educational tools to be like, when we get to that point, what are some things we might need to help us? So do you have to wait until the marriage? I would say not, but
Yeah.
again, it's not my religious practice that you are
Like
specifically
how strict
describing.
does it need to be? Because if it's just his nipples, can't you sort of like start bringing that into? Can't you start playing in that area a little bit sooner? Is it that strict? I feel like it's not, right?
I mean,
What
you're
do
asking
you
the wrong
know?
person because I'm like, yeah, go for it. And I want to respect where they're at, but that could be a question to have amongst their partnership, maybe with the
Yeah.
support of like some of the resources I was mentioning of just like, hey, does it feel within our values to like talk about pleasure so that when we
Mm,
get to this place, we're able to um, connect in the way that God had intended for us and be able
cool.
to find that pleasure with each other. So I think there's things you might be able to do now, but let's check and see what your values are. In terms of the nipple thing specifically, um, body parts don't have genders. And so I know there's some people out there who feel really strongly about like the gender binary of male, female, whatever, but the body is just a body and it has nerve endings and tissues all over it. And so nipples, chest area, is not necessarily like, oh, this is only an area where women are allowed to feel pleasure. It's just an area where everyone has the potential to have certain kinds of tissue and nerve endings. Same thing, like anyone with a chest can get breast cancer, not just women. And so this is not a woman's thing. There are a lot of
Mm-hmm.
cisgendered men or people with penises who enjoy nipple play. And so when you're exploring this with this partner, maybe it could be a reciprocal question around like, hey, when we do get to that place, do you know if there's a part of your body that I would be surprised to know that you liked touched? And it doesn't even have to be a sexual part of your body. Like
Yeah.
maybe you really like when somebody like breathes on your neck or pets your hair. Like are there parts of your body that bring you sexual or non-sexual just pleasure in general?
Yeah.
And so it can be sort of a reciprocal question of like, oh well, thanks for telling me, actually I realized I kind of enjoy like touch in this area. Is that something you're open to?
Yeah. I
um
like touching these bad boys.
yeah.
That's what I like.
Yeah, exactly. Or I mean, it really depends what your values are, but like I said, maybe instead of going from 0 to like, hey, touch my nipples, or which I mean I'm a fan of, and if someone's like not,
Yeah.
let's see, how do I say this? My personal values are I want to be with somebody in partnership or marriage who does care about my pleasure. And so
Hmm.
this could also be a good litmus test of like, hey, I really want to share something with you that's kind of scary for me, but that is exciting for me. And then if they continue to respond negatively about that, that's not someone who aligns with my values personally. Um,
Yeah.
so something to think about.
And I think you guys will be fine. I think that they're not going to care. They're going to be like, oh, cool. And it was in Come As You Are where I read actually some men are just have more they have more nerve endings there. So it's just like on the distribution. Maybe you're like slightly higher on that distribution, or you're just into it. That is all awesome. But I like what you're saying again. I like what you're saying with the reverse question. That was very cunning. Maybe the first guy can use that too. Would you
Yeah.
mind? Would you ever mind being someone's slave? Oh,
Yeah.
me too.
Yeah. I mean, and just I want to normalize this for this person who asked this question. Like, I wish
Yeah.
more male identifying people liked their nipples played with. Like,
Hmm.
it's so fun. Like, I'm bummed out when I would love to do that with someone and they're like, I don't really like that, or I don't like feel anything there. And I'm like, that's a big bummer because that's a whole bunch of real estate we could be playing with. So potentially your partner might be excited about it, just like I'm excited about it.
There we go. Amazing. I'm a 24 female in a 1 year relationship with my boyfriend, who is 27. I'm looking to do something in the bedroom to add some spice. How may I go about this? I feel shy expressing what I'm into.
Okay. I mean, I feel like we've covered this a bit, already,
Hmm.
but first, it could be helpful to get clearer on, what you like and what you're interested in, and to practice getting those words in your mouth and like in your head. So whether it be journaling about it, or if there's a friend you could talk to even just practice like saying the thing out loud, or even by yourself in the
Mm,
mirror, just being like, I like when you do blah, blah, blah. I like when you do that. Like
mm.
just practicing getting the words in your mouth in a way that is like in a safe place. And again, I'm also really a big proponent of being fine with like letting people blame me. And
Yeah.
so whether it's a
Blame
podcast I've done,
Nicoletta,
yeah,
blame
blame me
Couply.
for
These are
everything.
two things that you guys can blame.
Yeah, so like use Couply, use an article, check out like my podcast episodes or something like that, like find one around what could be into. There's also there's also other apps I've seen. I don't know if you've seen where you can like swipe on things that you are into, and then it
Mm-hmm.
shows you like the overlap
The
of what you're
match.
into. Yeah, so like find an app like Couply or something where you can ask, the questions are being asked for you, to be like, oh, I'm not asking, it's the app. Or like, oh,
Yeah.
I heard this in a podcast, not me. Just to help you get to a place of feeling more confident about it, like to open the door. Um, I'm also a big fan of like name it to tame it, we call it in therapy, where it's like, it's understandable to be anxious about it. Is this someone that you trust with other feelings that you have? You've been together for a year. So is this someone that you trust with when you feel anxious or sad in general? And if it is, then use that for this and be like, hey, there's something I want to talk to you about, because I feel so comfortable with you and I love you, but I'm anxious and I need your help. Can you help me? Um, and then it's really hard for the person receiving that to be like, fuck you, no. Right? Ideally, they'll respond non-defensively and wanting to join you and support you.
And
Sorry, my
remember,
dog my
90%.
dog is having some feelings in the background.
And remember, 90% of people want to try new things in the bedroom. So I'm sure your partner feels exactly the same way, and they're
Yeah,
very excited to talk to this through you as well. Awesome.
absolutely.
I'm a 25-year-old female in a 4.5-year relationship, and I'm interested in learning how to do a prostate massage. I've heard it feels incredible, and I've already talked about it with him. He's open to it. He even tried it himself and really liked it. He proceeded to buy some toys for the same reason, which I'm really happy for. I love that he's so open to new things, but actually, I would like to learn how to do that myself so I'm the source of his enjoyment. However, I'm a little shy about it. I don't really know how to start. Do I just follow his lead to guide me what feels good and where and how? P.S. I hope this is not a stupid question.
Never a stupid question. It sounds like there's so many great strengths and possibilities here for getting both of your needs met and connecting on trying this new thing. For people who don't know what a prostate massage is, people who have penises have a bunch of nerve tissue, and an area in their body called a prostate. It can usually be accessed mostly through the butt, through the anus, and it is very pleasurable. Just to make sure that people listening hear this louder in the back, that again doesn't make you gay, and it doesn't matter if it did make you gay. So like, having your butt played with, having a prostate massage does not have to indicate anything about your sexuality, and there's also nothing wrong with being gay of any kind. And so for people out there who are not wanting to try butt stuff because of their hangups around orientation and sexuality, I invite you to kind of take a look at that and what that's about, for you, because again, it's just a body part that has a lot of pleasure, and not for everyone. Doesn't mean you have to like anal play or butt pleasures. But if you're closed to it just because of uh, this homophobia or this internalized shame or whatever, that's a bummer, because you're missing out on a huge pleasure area that has a lot of wonderful potential. So in terms of trying it, the last part you said is always a great place to start. There are certain techniques and things that I would say are objectively true for learning how to play with a butt, that I'll get to, but super important to figure out what your partner likes. And so absolutely, it could always be a great idea to be like, hey, would you be willing to show me how you do it and what you like, because I want to see that. That's hot. And I hear that it's nice to be a collaborator on your partner's pleasure, but I do think sometimes it can get a little bit tricky and ownershipy when the person's like, I want to be the source of your pleasure, as opposed to it being like a collaborative experience. So really, yeah, take the time. If they're willing to show you what they like and how they like to be touched, they're going to be the barometer of trying all these things out. So it would be good to ask them, how will I know when you're enjoying it? What will I be? And this is inspired from a colleague of mine named Midori, who asked questions like, what will I be seeing and hearing when you're enjoying yourself? And then on the flip side, what will I be seeing and hearing if you're in pain? What will I be seeing and hearing if you're not okay with this? Do we have a safe word? Then a couple, I would say, more objective guidelines around anal play. Start really freaking slow, slower than you think. Don't go usually right to any kind of penetration. So by starting slow, I mean maybe just massaging around the area for the first time, maybe like around the butt cheeks themselves, or like between the cheeks, or on the what we call the perineum, the taint, which is between the balls and the anus, and practicing breathing together, just kissing, just massaging that area. Breathing is also very important here. Other people also like to prepare in different ways. So some people are scared of shit happening, literally and metaphorically. If you're playing with the butt, shit can happen, no matter how well you prearrange things. So just embrace it as a potential part of things. But if you're worried about that, get a nice sex blanket, get a nice black towel, change your lighting, get some black gloves. Get a nice scented candle. There are lots of things to help prepare. In terms of actually going inside, again, really starting slow. I would say waiting for that person to have what I would call a hungry butthole. So instead of being like, we're going in now, have them be like, I want you to tell me when you want me to go inside. For this, I'm a visual person, so I really like to have visual. Good news is educational videos on this exist. Check out B Vibe, which sells a bunch of toys and tools. They have a podcast and videos about how to butt. Also, an educator named Luna Matatas has some great classes on this for some affordable prices too. Watch a video, watch it together, practice, check it out. Practice some relaxation techniques together. And then once you're going inside, you need lube. Always find a lot of lube. Lube is your best friend always and forever for any kind of sex. So lube also here is key.
Amazing. Awesome. That was great, Nicoletta. You're so thorough. Awesome. That's like a full guide for this person. So fantastic.
Yeah, and that's just the beginning. So watch some of this stuff, you'll get there. But take it slow.
I've been with my partner almost 20 years. We try a lot of things sexually. I would really like for her to continue giving me oral sex as I come, but she always stops oral sex right before that. I would like it because I think it would feel so good for me. I can understand for her, maybe she doesn't like the taste or the texture of it, but she hasn't tried it or explained why not to me. It is hard to accept because I would do anything sexually for her. But there are a couple of things that she won't do for me. Hard not to be a little frustrated and let down, but I know it's a silly thing.
I just couldn't stop thinking of Meatloaf. I would do anything for love, but I won't do that.
What was that thing that he was talking about? Anyway,
I really want to know. Probably, maybe butt stuff. No, I feel like he would like butt stuff. Sorry, thank you, Meatloaf. Okay, so firstly, yeah, it probably would feel good. I can understand why you want that. No shame in desiring this. But I'm also curious, they didn't mention it here and they said they don't know why their partner's not into it. And have you asked?
She hasn't explained it.
Yeah.
but she hasn't tried it or explained why not to me, and it's hard to accept.
Okay, so if you're waiting for her to explain why not to you, um, maybe ask instead.
Yeah.
And there are plenty of nice ways to ask it. I'll give you a few examples. Oh my gosh, I so love when you're going down on me. It feels so good and I really enjoy it. It's such a wonderful thing we do together. And, I've noticed that you usually like stop, right before I come, and totally understand some people aren't into that. Like, I'm just curious, can you help me understand what is it about that you're not into? Thank you for telling me. I, feel so much closer to you when we can have these open conversations. Is there anything that you want me to know about what you would like differently? Um, so that's called the shit sandwich technique. It's say the nice thing, say the difficult thing, say the nice thing, or frame it as a compliment. Because if you haven't asked, this is an opportunity for you to be curious, and not in a way of like, why don't you do that, but just like, hey, help me understand. Is it the taste? Is it the texture? Have you had a negative experience? Is there anything I could do to help with any of that? And if you have asked and they're like, I don't know, it may just be a boundary. And I know it sucks sometimes when the thing we want comes up against, a boundary. And you may just have to respect that, and or ask if your partner is willing to collaborate on an alternative. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Alternative could be, hey, now that you've explained to me why you're not into this, okay, you don't like the taste, but, I do kind of want to share with you that it does sort of impact my pleasure when we sort of stop at this time. Is there a way we could find like a win-win? Is there another part of your body that you're comfortable with me doing this on? There's also lots of toys and tools one could use, for something like that. Sometimes people like just fantasizing and talking about it and maybe not doing it. So there may be options here, and it may be a boundary. And in that case, after you get this curiosity understood, um, it may not happen. And yeah, you might have to grieve that.
I think they'll be okay. And this is a time. It's not the time to do it while this is happening, right? You want to have this conversation outside of the bedroom, so to speak, like versus giving direct feedback during.
Yes, ideally, I mean, I want to give people like permission to talk throughout sex and make talking throughout sex sexy. And
Yeah.
in the way we just described it, probably not the ideal timing to like right before you come being like, can you please just swallow it this time? Like, yeah, probably not ideal.
Yeah.
Would recommend having this conversation while your partner's penis isn't in, while your partner doesn't have your penis in their mouth.
Right. So you're not sort of shouting down at them. Hard not to be a little frustrated and let down right now.
Right. Yeah, like pick a neutral time. Maybe when you're on a walk or you've had a nice dinner together, and then ask consent. Be like, "Hey, can I check in with you about something involving our sex life?"
And it's definitely scenes that they're doing a really great job. Been together 20 years, trying a lot of things
Yeah,
sexually. That's great. There's a lot of positives here, it seems like.
totally. Totally. And again, don't want to minimize that you want this. Like I heard that they were like, "Should I just like suck it
Yeah.
up?" Like, no, have a conversation, get
Mm.
curious. Like it's okay to want this, and can we get a little more information?
Yeah. Amazing. Well, Nicoletta, those are all the coupley questions that we had down today. And I just want to say thank you for such an incredible job. That was
We did well
amazing
on
for me to
timing.
watch.
Oh my
Oh,
gosh.
yeah.
We got through
We did.
them.
We got through them, went through them perfectly. I could not have done this without you. This was absolutely amazing and so valuable to the coupley audience and community. I'm really excited to share this with them. So thank you. And before we close, any other announcements, updates, and finally, how can people connect with you and see more of your work?
Thank you again for having me, and thank you, Couply audience, for your questions. Great and not stupid questions. um, they're all welcome. Again, just yeah, so glad you have a platform for people to start these chats. So you can follow me through my podcast, Sluts and Scholars, which is at slutsandscholars.com, or on Instagram at slutsandscholars. Um, I am also at Therapy with Nicoletta, which is more kind of my private practice stuff. And you can find my personal website there for therapy and coaching. And yeah, I hope to see some of you at the live show happening February 10th next year in Hollywood or online. And for that, I believe the link is AD, stands for Afternoon Delight, AD Live. .eventbrite.com, but we'll definitely be posting about it on our social media, so you can kind of track it there, and hope to see you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Nicoletta. Really appreciate you being on the show.
Thank you.